Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 355 for September 15th, 2024. I'm host TomMaster99, and with me tonight are one Mr. DBQ Hams. DB, how are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. It is good to be back and plenty to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Lots of games and news. And, of course, Mr. Game Logic. Game, how's it going?
Good, guys. How are you?
Great. Oh, man, we got to get the energy level up here, guys.
It was that chill intro music. I was like, yeah,
no.
this is good.
Very
Nice and
Minecraft-esque.
peaceful.
Yes. All right, let's get started with our main GX stories for tonight. Tonight, I'm going to kick it off with a game I had mentioned actually right at the end of the episode last week, which was Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. So this collection has a bunch of the Marvel vs. Capcom. It has X-Men: Children of Atom. What was it? Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2. Just Marvel superheroes. It's got the Punisher, which is just like a side-scrolling fighting game, kind of like Final Fight, Streets of Rage, that kind of game. So I played a little bit of all of them except for Marvel vs. Capcom 2 so far. And I played it both on my PC. I bought it on Steam, so I played on my PC and on my Steam Deck.
How's it run on the deck?
It runs fine. Yeah, it's actually pretty smooth. I haven't seen any issues. I played the Punisher, X-Men, Children of the Atom, Marvel superheroes on the Steam Deck, and then I played the other two, Street Fighter versus X-Men and Marvel vs. Capcom on my PC so far. And yeah, it was running fine on the Steam Deck. Haven't seen any issues. You have the little it's not full screen, unfortunately. Even on PC or anything like that, you got that kind of letterbox vertically, at least on the sides. You got I don't know. I think it just has like Capcom, Marvel vs. Capcom or something on the side. So I was kind of like, I mean, they couldn't have fixed that. They couldn't full screen it, but I guess this is all older games, so I guess it's kind of hard to do that sometimes. But ran great. I'd never played the Punisher before, so that was kind of cool. That even though I think that was out on arcades, right? Originally, most of these were actually, or all of them were.
I think so, but it was Super Nintendo, but it was really rare. So.
Oh, okay. That's probably why I never got a chance to play it. Yeah. So I never played an arcade. I'm not even sure if I ever saw it in the arcades, to be honest with you. I don't know if you guys ever did. But yeah, so that was, just usual kind of beat 'em up. Like I said, like Final Fight. It was cool. I want to kind of continue playing on that because I just never played that one before. So I'm assuming I'll get unlimited lives too. So it shouldn't hopefully take me too long to beat the game. I think there is 2 players on that one. So you're either Punisher or you're Nick Fury. So you can choose between the two, and you can choose those even in the single player match too. If you wanted to, you could just play Nick Fury, which I thought was kind of weird, but it's kind of cool too. You got your usual, punches and kicks, and he's got like a special move's a little weird. It's like a round, not a roundhouse, but like a crouchy roundhouse kick that he does, I guess, when he's doing his special, which I thought was kind of weird. You can pick weapons, guns and knives and all that. So it's pretty cool. It's actually pretty nice. I'm not sure if there's anything else to it other than that, but it seems pretty good so far. And then playing the actual fighting games though, man, back in the day, like I used to play these kind of games like a lot on the consoles, and obviously I was using a controller. For some reason, like trying to use these controllers now, like the Steam Deck or even I use the Xbox when I'm playing on PC and my Xbox controller. I just it was super hard to pull off any of the moves, like even just a normal like a fireball type of move, like I'm playing Street Fighter guys and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, or maybe obviously these are I'm used to playing with an arcade stick. So maybe I was actually thinking of maybe buying an arcade stick for this just because it'd be a little bit easier. And even back in the day, like sometimes I would have like a little bit of an issue, doing maybe like his, like a Ryu, like his uppercut move. And I think Captain America has a similar type move, where it's that weird like I think it's like right down and then you kind of have to hit in the middle. So that was always kind of hard on the, on a joystick or on a D-pad. But I don't know. It just seems like even just like regular move, like I said, like a fireball seemed kind of difficult to pull off. But it was running smoothly though. Like I said, I didn't have any issues graphically or just gameplay wise. I didn't see any stuttering or anything like that. So, which I mean, hopefully there wouldn't be. These are all sprite based games, so hopefully they'd run pretty smooth. But yeah, I'm having a ton of fun with this. I grew up with playing these games, like I said, in the arcade, and even when they would come to console. Every so often, I'd play those. So, and I think it only goes up to Marvel versus Capcom 2. So, because I think there was 2 more Marvel versus Capcoms, maybe one more, at least one more that I know for sure. After that, like years later, after 2 is kind of the pinnacle for me. Like those later ones, and even the controls on this one, you can. There's like a dedicated, super button if you want to do it, or like ultimate and stuff like that. I was like, it's. I want to do it the old way where I have to hit, all 3 buttons or all 2 buttons for a kick or a punch or whatever, whoever you're playing, that's how you do their ultimate or their super special. So, yeah, but I'm having a lot of fun so far with it. Any comments or questions on that one? No? Either you guys pick it up or planning on picking it up? I know Game Logic, I think, said he might.
Yeah, I'll probably wait for a sale. Definitely, it is. I enjoyed those games back in the arcade. I never, just like you, I never played the Punisher, but I enjoy a belt scroller, beat 'em up type of thing. So, yeah, I not sure what console I'll pick it up on or a PC, but I'm glad that that collection exists. It should be fun to come back and revisit at some point in time.
Yes.
Well, I was going to ask you, Tao, why exactly did you pick this up on Steam Deck / PC? These are available on console. Just kind of curious why you decided to go that route instead of kind of kicking back, in a couch, big comfy chair, playing it on console where, these kind of games seem like they would live.
Game Logic, is your voice modulated, or is you just huffing some helium there before you got on the show?
I did that because of Tao's comment that we needed to pick the energy level up.
There you go. Now you can.
Excuse me. Spider-Man's moves are not canon relevant.
Basically, I wanted to play it on the Steam Deck because I figured I think it. I know it didn't come out on Xbox yet, and I think there was a report last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, where both this one and the second fighting game collection is supposed to come out on Xbox next year. So I might have picked it up on Xbox, like if it had came out the same day, but I didn't really feel like, the since I play mostly undocked on my Switch, I don't want to break my Joy-Cons any more than they already are or will be at some point. So, although to be fair, I haven't had any issues with the Joy-Cons for quite a couple of years now, a few years. So it's been a while, but still, these are, we play especially those fighting games, the versus games. Maybe not so much the Punisher, but you're pretty hard on the sticks. So I was like, I think I'll just, I'll buy it on PC. And these, I have multiple Xbox controllers I can always use if one of them happens to break or start to drift or something. So that's why I did that.
Okay. And when you play on your like full blown PC, like what are you? I can't remember. Are you using just like an Xbox controller for that?
Yeah, I just use one of my Xbox controllers. Yeah, that's the only thing. Yep. All right, DB, you got our next game, sports game, not football.
Not football, no. Although I have started a online league dynasty with NCAA, but last week at the end of the show, I was talking about getting in and playing a little bit more of NBA 2K25. Played around a little bit last week and I played some more this week. It is getting better at the shot. There's ways you can adjust it. You can go back to last year's meter, or you can go with the new meter, which is a little more timing based and animation based. But it is played around with both the W and the My Career. My Career is the microtransaction heavy mode. Last year there really wasn't much of a story mode to it, and this year there's a little bit more. It's not quite a return to the kind of heavy story modes that were in 16 through 23. 23 I spent probably over a year getting through all the story mode pieces and being high enough, earning enough in games to actually bring up my character. And that's part of the reality of the My Career piece. Is it's such a microtransaction heavy. I enjoy the aspect of it. I enjoy kind of going through and increasing my character, but not necessarily starting off at 60 and being tempted with another $20 to $50 purchase for for virtual currency. That if I wanted to get it up to 70, I'm spending about $20 extra. If I want to get it up into the 80, low 80s, it's around another $40 on top of the game for virtual currency. But it is, the on-court action is great. It is the My City is a little more compact than it has been in the past couple of years. So moving around that is a little easier. It is one of the reasons I started the W, so you can do a My Career player in the WNBA and either choose to be a rookie or somebody coming in from Europe that has been playing over there. And there you start either at like 70 or you start at like mid 80s. And so, and you don't there's no, you level up, but there's no virtual currency connected to it. And it's been kind of fun. The pace of the game is totally different compared to playing in the regular NBA, playing in the WNBA. There's a lot more, just like any other WNBA game, right? The pace is a little different. That you're much more focused on passing, creating shots than trying to create a big score and fast breaks. So, but it's been pretty fun. It's, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese are both 90s. So, they hit some of the key rookies there. Carmela Cardosa on Chicago Sky. It doesn't look like they did any type of face capture or image capture at all because she does not look close compared to some of the other rookies. Looks much more of a generic character, which is too bad. But it is, it's fun. You go through, it's a little more menu based in terms of you're not moving around a city with the W, but you're still having some interaction with teams. You've got, things that you're doing in between games that boost different levels of your height meter or your teammate meter type of thing. So it's been enjoyable and it's worked as an alternative to being tempted by microtransactions. So, yeah, as Thrifty PS Gamer says, yeah, the city is a little more condensed this time around. It's you spent so much time kind of wandering, skateboarding through the city, or trying to navigate the city to get to where your side quests were, which would give you a little bit of boosts here and there for different things. So, but it's nice to have that a little more condensed. I haven't tried the new MyGM mode. MyGM has been in there for quite a while, where you take on the role of a GM and do a lot of the hiring. Over the past couple of years, they've added almost like a point system to like a day aspect. So in a week, so you only have certain points that you can do, or in certain interactions that cost those points. This year they've created a MyGM building where you move between people to speak to, but from everything I've read about it, it's pretty shallow, that you're not necessarily having interactions with anybody if they don't have a new set of text to interact with, and they full on go, the World of Warcraft type of, there's an arrow over their head to tell you that you need to have there's something new that they have to say or a quest to give you. So those are some of the modifications, some of the new pieces. But again, the gameplay on court is really solid. NBA 2K is one of those, just like MLB The Show is a game that I'll come back to throughout a season. So the fact that I'm not too far into it at this point, given that the NBA season hasn't really started, I'm not too worried about it, because it's something I'll chip away at over the course of the next 9 months, probably.
Nice. And then your choice PS5, or just you kind of choose something different each year, or?
I've been on the Xbox for the last number of years. In 24, I had it on PlayStation because it was a free PS Plus game at some point in time, and I enjoyed the integration of the DualSense. That I think I talked about it on here, that as you're winded and you no longer have sprint, you get a little more resistance on your trigger buttons. So, and it's the console that's hooked up to my 4K TV. So if I was going to buy it early, I wanted to have a nice graphic resolution for it.
Nice. All right. Game Logic, any questions or comments?
Yep. No, I don't think so.
No. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Let's jump. Actually, before we jump into the news, thanks everybody for stopping by the comments. Wara, Thrifty, and Nate. Thank you for stopping by. Game Logic, if you want to stay on the mic and hit that first news headline.
Yep. So first news headline is World of Warcraft Union hits out at heartless Microsoft gaming layoffs. The story over on IGN by Wesley Ian Poole. The Communications Workers of America has heavily criticized Microsoft's. I wasn't sure if the grammatical agreement was correct on that, but I'll just read it as it's written. The Communications Workers of America has heavily criticized Microsoft's announcement of a further 650 layoffs from its gaming business, with one union formed to represent Activision Blizzard's World of Warcraft team calling the cuts heartless. Yesterday, September 12th, Xbox chief Phil Spencer sent a memo to staff obtained by IGN outlining plans to let 650 staff go, mostly from Activision Blizzard's corporate and supporting functions, while confirming no games or devices were canceled and no studios were being closed. So my cut on this is, if no games are canceled out of the rather large roadmap that Microsoft has put out, I would be incredibly surprised by that. Not simply due to these 650, but just due to the aggregate of all the layoffs that they've done. I just find that really difficult to believe. The other thing is, these cuts are hitting, the Call of Duty team. This was the Warzone mobile team. One thing that I don't understand just yet, and maybe it's going to change, is that again, with Call of Duty and post-acquisition, we're going to push Call of Duty to the cloud. We're going to push Call of Duty to the Nintendo Switch. Those development pipelines were not part of the standing Call of Duty team that existed prior to, which was already like 1,100, 1,200 people, the largest game development team in the industry, until EA went into this size of staff arms race and claims that now the Battlefield team is bigger than the Call of Duty team. But that's neither here nor there. But like, at some point, like, there have to be more people to further develop this game at a larger scale than it was previously being developed. So the whole time while these layoffs have been going on, one of the things that I've said is, it's not unusual. I would expect that Xbox now, given where it is and given the vision that it's talked about getting to this hybrid cloud compute platform, that it's probably likely that they're going to have to lay off certain staff, and then restaff, because you do this when you have to reskill set, right? You have the right number of people now, but the people aren't the right skill set. Toys for Bob probably doesn't fit into the new schema of where Xbox is going. So I understand things like that. But now we're going into just an additional period of time of continuing these layoffs, and I don't necessarily hear any inklings of the new hires I would expect to be getting onboarded. Now, maybe that's happening via cannibalization with other Microsoft staff. I'm not sure. So I don't know. Your guys' thoughts on this one?
I mean, I can remember when Activision bought Blizzard and let a number of Blizzard marketing communication staff go. If this is really just corporate and supporting functions, then it's not surprising. In any type of acquisition, there is those redundancies in some of those structural systems, not necessarily in development.
Corporate and supporting functions, but also it is hitting two additional development teams, right? The Call of Duty Warzone mobile team, and Blizzard's Warcraft mobile team, and that's another piece that I don't get entirely. And again, this is like, I'm not making assertions of skullduggery going on here. It's just, I don't know. Like, I thought Call of Duty Warzone mobile was all being done by Tencent, but apparently that's not the case. There's some level of in-house support for it. So,
well, and that I would think is still pretty profitable, where I wonder what the kind of player retention numbers look like on Warcraft Rumble, which was kind of the reskin of Clash of Clans with a little bit of Warcraft into it. Not a bad game, but not necessarily anything that really pushed the needle and did something a whole lot new and different.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't even sure what the Rumble was. How long has that been going on?
It released in 23. I remember playing it for a week or two and fell off of it. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I mean, yeah, I think you guys pretty much said it. I mean, I know, and not to say this is right or anything, but yeah, obviously, when you buy companies like this, or companies get bought, and merge, and I'm going through it right now, actually, in my company. Excuse me. People are going to be let go, and like I said, not that I agree with it, but I mean, it's unfortunately it's going to happen. And the I don't know if it's, I don't want to say they're being like dramatic, but the doom and gloom of of saying it, and these people are heartless and stuff like that. I get it. Like, yeah, they've made what I think they mentioned in the article, 88 billion in profits, last year and stuff like that. But uh, but on the business side, obviously, they are looking at like everything, not just like a little section of stuff, through the business. So like I said, unfortunately, it's just an unfortunate thing that happens in the business world. So, I mean, I don't know, Game Logic, if you had anything else that you wanted to say.
No, I mean just that. Look, I mean you're gonna get some of that additional shade thrown at you when you unionize, right? When you start, I'm not sure how exactly I want to say that. Like when that becomes a component of the dynamic, right, of your employee corporate relationship, then you're gonna get that shade thrown at you. Um, Now here I'll punctuate things that I've been saying since the acquisition hearing started and before. Like again, as we are seeing now, unions do not prevent layoffs from happening, right? They impact exactly, they can often impact exactly who's let go, in my opinion, in a not necessarily positive manner. Um, and they can impact severance pay and packages, right? Because some of those agreements, right, in the unionization, will trade on those areas, but they don't stop layoffs from happening. So I think people either got their hopes up, or maybe can kind of package that along with the justification for the acquisition, and I would just warn people that that's not the case.
Yep.
Anything else before we move on?
No, you can go ahead to the next one.
Okay. Uh, Sorry. First on this news story over on gamesindustry.biz. First Ontario Game Dev Labor Union formed at Joy Drop. Majority of staff who voted reportedly fired. This news story by Sophie McAvoy. The first labor union of game developers in Ontario was formed by staff at Joy Drop, only for the majority of employers that voted to reportedly be fired 2 working days after the victory. Joy Drop is the gaming brand of London-based service agency MicUtech. Not sure exactly how that's pronounced. Founded in 2013 by Mark Mikulek. It specializes in work for hire services, including porting and co-development, and has worked with the likes of Gearbox, Skybound, and Armor Game Studios. What the article goes on to say is that, look, this company was already in a labor dispute over past, bad hiring and firing practices, and then this came up as well. But apparently, like somewhere between like I think like 16 or 17 employees, it's a small company, voted in favor of unionization, and like on sounds like it was like on a Friday, and then like the Monday morning they walked into VTC, and 14 of them were let go. So lots of claims that obviously this had nothing to do with the people unionizing. That seems like it's not going to be the case. Um, this team seems to have like one of the biggest problems going on in the gaming industry. Again, that's an actual problem, not some of the foolishness that I think people ascribe the problems to. Um, but a big problem in the gaming industry is how games are funded. And this is another thing, right, that I've tried to cover and we've tried to cover here. Uh, in very many cases, particularly for indies, games are not funded like it's not like an EA internal project where it's just part of the capital budget. And EA says, "Hey, we've got this much available to fund in development." It's a big project management framework. People, pony up with their estimates of how much their project is going to cost, and that becomes a big budget. And AOP figures into that, and blah 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 blah. In many cases, indies, like it's a bit of funding here and a bit of funding there and a backer here. It's much more analogous to a movie than it is to like an internal project. So this team was finding money. They had backers. They had just received a $40,000 grant. They had millions of other backing. So there's there's accusations that the people who were in charge were not really interested in making games, that it was much more kind of uh, a gig, and a business and a hustle, than it was about the creative process and dedicating themselves to working on a given title. And that has somehow been part of the causality behind the weirdness that's going on. I don't know. Any comments on this, guys?
No, I mean, I know that the guy was claiming, and yeah, obviously we don't know if it's true because it seems like it was just the one person, at least according to this article. I know there's, I think, a few different lawsuits going on, but I guess it was a little shady the way they were kind of let go to, like, they were just like, oh, hey, this is a New Year meeting, because I think this happened at the beginning of January. I'm trying to flip through this article. Yeah, January 8th. So at the beginning of the year, and it was like, hey, it's just a New Year meeting, and then they find out that they're being fired. So that's a little shady, I guess. I mean, it's not like, I don't know. I just, the way I've seen, obviously you're not going to just, tell your people, hey, this is a, you're being let go meeting, but also, trying to, I don't know, I guess sugarcoat it or whatever, or hide it to, to your employees. That seems kind of shady. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't know if it was bad timing too, with how they were talk about the unionizing, and these people just happened to be let go, or if it was actually I don't know, some kind of retaliation or something. I don't. You never know. Like with things like this, I guess once the court cases start going, we might find out. But I don't know. It just seems all kind of weird timing, I guess. DB,
Yeah, I think it definitely raises some questions in terms of its timing. I think it's pretty easy for them to make that claim given the timing of it all, and it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. I think the thing that kind of surprises me about this is the fact that layoffs from January of 24 are hitting the news now, and it's mainly because of the unfair labor lawsuits that are coming forth, more so than it is the layoffs at that time. There were plenty of other layoffs going around at that time in the end of the year aspects. I mean, there's been plenty of layoffs for the last year, but the lawsuit aspect of this does raise, I don't think you wouldn't, well, it'd be interesting to see. I was going to say, you wouldn't necessarily, if it took this long, the lawsuits are not reactionary. They have spent their due diligence to make sure that they have enough documentation to have a strong claim of unfair practices.
Yeah, make a case for themselves. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, it could have just gotten lost in all the the big layoffs and stuff from the beginning of the year too.
So look, the reason this is in the rundown is just to point out and highlight to people that unionization is not a slam dunk, right? There are challenges to it in the gaming industry. There are, I mean, a large part of the reason the industry isn't unionized now is because of a lot of union busting behavior, right? And when I say union busting is not like lots of times when gaming companies, as we're going to talk about one tonight, put high prices on things, a lot of people react with this label of price gouging. Price gouging actually has a hyper specific legalistic definition to it, right? So when I say union busting, I don't apply that label casually. Actually, union busting is fairly loose and wide in its definition. Things like Lulu Chang Messervy's behavior in the corporate Slack last year or the year before, when she was mentioning things kind of discouraging, not necessarily directly discouraging people from unionizing, but talking about how incentivizing it would be to not unionize. That is a form of union busting, right? So it's happened at Activision. It continues to happen around the industry. There are reasons executives are not in favor of unionizing in the industry, and unionization in the industry is tough because of the things I've mentioned before, that unionizing is not necessarily favorable to a senior hands-on keyboard engineer, who's going to be told that, hey, instead of making a six-figure Rockstar salary, your salary is now going to be negotiated along with everybody else, all the way down to like the tester. Like that's not. Trying to be polite. There's no way in heck I would I would do that. Lots of us wouldn't do that. So it's tough. It's going to be a continuing fight. Anything else before I move on to the next one?
Go ahead.
Okay, so now we have a good news story coming up. Update this story over on VG 24/7 by Mark Warren. Update Metro Studio 4A Games, one of my favorite studios of all time, games to remain with Embracer Group rather than being acquired by Space Marine 2 developer Saber Interactive. And while I do think this is good news, I actually think 4A would have been better off with Saber. But at any rate, update which just came out 2 days ago. Embracer Group has now confirmed in a press release that 4A Games and Zen Studios will be sticking with it with their potential sales to Saber Interactive as part of the $247 million deal announced earlier this year that's seen the latter be sold to Beacon Interactive from the former having been canceled. If you had a tough time following that, so do I. Saber CEO Matt Carr, like the Embracer soap opera is, I want to say it's interesting, but it's almost interesting to the point of being frustrating, like that there's so many like incestuous relationships and divorces and adoptions going on that it's like it's ridiculous, and it's indicative of the mess that this whole cabal and pyramid scheme has been. Saber CEO Matt Karch, who wrote in a letter to staff back in March that the company planned to pick up options that would see it acquire and take the Metro and pinball developers with it, said in a fresh statement to Bloomberg that it was always our intention to exercise on 4A, but added we thought it would be better for all parties for the studio to remain with Embracer. And then their original stories down below. So part of this is generated because quite honestly, I didn't catch the original announcement, so I don't know how forthright and transparent there's been lots of accusations thrown at Embracer that their articulation of who's going where has not been entirely transparent. Um, some of this comes from Jason Schreier doing his regular thing, which is often not necessarily about actually reporting news, but often just about stirring up scuttlebutt and gossip. Um, so it's not clear with a lot of these things to me whether or not they've really been efforts to obfuscate things, which in general you wouldn't do because Embracer is a publicly traded company. And they do have responsibilities that they have to make, and they do have right lines of illegality that they can cross. Um, or whether or not they're just simply a mistake. Because as you can see, like I mean, if I were in charge, I would have a freaking hard time remembering like what companies were going where, in this huge pyramid scheme. So I don't know. Any comments from you guys on this one?
I was just wondering why you would think they would have been better with Saber, just because it's Embracer, because you never know what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, there's that. I mean, in DBQ, you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong. You track this stuff kind of closely, but if I think back through recent history and I think about the number of actual hits that have come out, like surprising, like hits that have come out of nowhere, right? And like Warhammer 40,000, Space Marine 2, right, is popular right now out of Saber. Dead. What am I? I'm forgetting
Dead
the title.
Island.
Yeah, Dead Island 2 last year. Again, surprise hit. So Saber seems to be hitting stride, at least to an extent, on finding the right mixture it needs as far as the creative endeavors are concerned. We got reports that Dead Island 2 did well financially. We haven't gotten those reports obviously on Space Marine 2 yet, but whether or not they're hitting all those markers financially, they definitely seem to be finding the right mix from the creative side. And so just, on an up pendulum swing, my feeling is right now they would be better off at Saber, who seems focused on the creative side and making good games right now, versus Embracer, who seems focused on a very, Warner Brothers Discovery kind of way of, playing 3-card monte, right, with the poker chips and trying to figure out, how to turn the books green.
I think the other part of it too is even though some of the companies might have left Embracer, didn't they keep some of the IPs still though on some of the games? I thought, which makes
I
it
think
kind of
so
even
on
more
some of them.
confusing.
Yeah, I think they kept some IPs. I mean, I would agree with Game Logic that anybody staying with Embracer, given what Embracer's gone through over the last 2 years and the amount of limited investments that they have to make in terms of game development and the runway of not having a big hit, and what comes of a studio after that. I feel like Saber is more invested in actual production of games versus the collection of them that Embracer was.
Yeah, and how the thing that you were mentioning before, I can't remember exactly what property is, but yeah, there were because of the way this whole thing has been, working. There have been instances where like IP was licensed to Embracer, but like the development was going on at Saber, which wasn't a big deal. But now that they're split, because I think Embracer had the license like before they acquired Saber, but now that they're splitting, like Saber is I think actively working on the game, but the licensing deal is still back with Embracer. Embracer didn't let go of the licensing deal or the IP. So yeah, you still have like weird messiness like that that's going to continue going on for a while.
Yeah, just at the end of the original article, they mentioned some of the Embracers companies they still have. So Aspire, which did Tomb Raider 1 through 3 remaster, and Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, the teardown developer Tuxedo Labs, Beamdog, which did Myth Force, excuse me, which came out I think last year, Tripwire and 34 Big Things, Demi Urge, I never heard of those, and Shiver Games, which I'm not sure what those studios have done yet. So they still got a few studios out there.
Yep, and Tripwire has done some stuff before. I know that developer.
Okay, more like indie stuff, or
I'd have to go back and look and see Tripwire.
Game, if you want to jump into the next article real quick, or next news item.
Yep. Next news story in the rundown is over on VG247 by Mark Warren. Following Immortals of Avium not really doing a thing, some of its former devs signed on with new studio from Rockstar legend Dan Houser's Absurd Ventures. Absurd Ventures, the company formed by longtime Rockstar mainstay Dan Houser a few years ago, has announced that it's formed a fresh studio under its umbrella. The studio, called Absurd Marin, comes with a starting staff of several former developers of Ascendant Studios' ill-fated Immortals of Avium. Yes, that's the Immortals of Avium that came out last year amid a whole barrage of other interesting things, and for the million reasons unfortunate things like this can happen. Didn't deliver the sales the fairly lofty budget the execs penciled in for it led them to expect. This was followed by some layoffs at Ascendant, which obviously no one with sense, no matter how they felt about the game itself, wanted to see. So I don't necessarily know that there's a huge additional, additional tail of the tape here. Dan Houser left Rockstar last year, I think. I
think 2 years ago at this point.
Maybe, yeah. And is widely lauded as the real like creative mind behind GTA and why am I not remembering it? Red Dead Redemption. So it was kind of surprising for him to leave, and I think it was a little surprising, and I don't know that we've heard the whole story because it seemed like it was before he left. It was a discussion of him just kind of being tired of like the industry and the grind and like wanting to kind of move on. And then when he did move on, then he founded a new studio, which would lead you to believe it wasn't just a matter of being tired. But it could have just very well been wanting to get into a creative space that didn't have, a Strauss Zelnick, right, breathing down your neck, wanting, needing you to hit financial marks also. And a studio that has clearly been buggy whipped, right, to focus on, games as a service online kind of stuff, although they still, obviously do the narratives, right, to lead you down that path. But, yes, do they care about GTA? Yes. Do they really care about GTA Online? Absolutely. So, very interesting, for this to occur. What I don't know is what is the financial backing of Dan Houser's studio? I mean, other than, his own pocket money, which will probably take them very, very, very far. But depending on how big the games are and how big they scale, I just don't know. I don't know if he's got Peter Molyneux kind of pockets, or other kind of pockets like a Matt Damon pockets. If I think about a movie scenario, like who can like fund their own studio projects because big studios won't fund them. So it'll be interesting to see. My My suspicion is that whatever Dan is working on, and again, this is an additional studio, right, under Hauser. My suspicion is we're going to start seeing these things land right with publisher deals at some point, but we'll see.
Yeah, this seems like it's the first time we've been hearing something more about Hauser Studio. It's been kind of quiet for quite a while. I mean, and the Immortals studio has not been quiet. We had the layoffs back in August of 23, shortly after the game released. Then in April of this year, we had another big round of layoffs that hit. Most of the reporting at the time back in April was that the majority of the staff had been furloughed, and so now to see that one of the co-founders of the studio is leaving as well, it makes you wonder what's left in that studio and how much backing support is there to create a new game, or do they kind of try to pitch themselves as a support studio for others at this point?
Yep. And maybe Dan was just tired of making GTA and Red Dead games. He wanted to go do something else. So maybe that's the tired he was talking about. All right, so let's jump into the next story, which actually I have, kind of continuing on the kind of good story trends. So we have the game Human Fall Flat, which is kind of like third person puzzle game. You're in control of this jelly clayish kind of guy, and there was a modder who actually had made a VR mod for this game, or was working on one. I shouldn't say made one. She had been working on it for a little while, and eventually people started asking him like, hey, when is this going to be fully released, what's going on? And he actually came back and said that the makers of Human Fall Flat, and I'm trying to see what their name was now. I forgot what it was. No Break Games had actually they bought the rights, basically like the code and the concept for the VR mod, and they're actually they're creating it themselves and gonna have a fully released VR mod sometime in the future. It looks like the Steam page just has coming soon for that mod, but it's pretty cool that they kind of there was two things of the story that I liked, and I guess one that was kind of weird to me. Like, hey, they saw something that was being made out there, they bought it, but then I was kind of thinking like, well, why didn't they have the actual guy who created it, go in and help them? Like all they did was buy the code and stuff. They didn't hire the guy or anything like that. Which, I mean, I guess it's obviously going to take money if you hiring on people like that. But I just thought that was kind of a little bit weird that they wouldn't hire on the guy that was actually working on it. Could probably get it going fairly quickly since he was already working on it. But they bought it and they're going to release it soon. So I just thought that was kind of a nice story out there that they saw something, and and even the guy kind of mentions, he's like, hey, they went out there and they paid me for this stuff, and he was like, which they didn't have to do, I guess, which I thought was kind of weird. Like, well, I guess that kind of makes sense too, because obviously you're not supposed to really do stuff with people's games. So, there's that part of it. So I guess they could have just like taken it and, ran with it themselves, but they actually paid the guy and, for all this stuff. So I thought that was just kind of a cool story. I don't know if you guys had any comments on anything there. No. All right, cool. Game, you want to jump back on the mic with some counterfeit ring, I guess that was busted up.
Yeah. So this news story over on GameSpot by Darren Bonthus. Italian police say they have busted a $52 million counterfeit retro console ring. The Italian streets are now safe from phony poly stations and Nintendo entertainment systems. Italy's financial police say they have successfully busted a ring that specialized in importing bootleg vintage video game consoles from China. According to the Italian authorities, the thousands of counterfeit consoles also contain millions of popular video games from the 80s and 90s. Around 12,000 consoles, on which more than 47 million pirated video games were illegally stored, were seized for an estimated value of more than 47.5 million euros, or $52.5 million. Head of the Economic Crime Unit for Turin's financial police, Alessandro Langella, told AFP. So, fortunately, I mean, unless I really speculated like way out there with a total tinfoil hat on, I don't think that there'd be anything particularly malicious about these handsets. So I don't think we have a thing like the Cisco counterfeiting ring that has been discovered that has wound up with millions of faux Cisco network switches in lots of government agencies and the problem that presents. But this is probably just going to get probably some fairly, I would assume, kind of unreliable, low grade, low quality hardware into the hands of potential gamers playing pirated software, which in and of itself, isn't a problem for the consumers. Although, you know, I would suspect that those games might have problems. These guys probably aren't warranting them. You probably don't have a service level agreement where they're going to pick up the phone if your handheld has a problem. So there's that. Yeah, I just thought this was particularly interesting, and it kind of highlights criminal organizations on the periphery of gaming striking it hot and taking advantage of a current market trend where there has been a rising zeitgeist around handheld gaming. So I thought that was interesting that back in the very home of the mob, that this ring would spring up and seek to distribute uh, you know uh, pirated hardware, or hardware hosting pirated software in an effort to take advantage of that particular market demand in the business cycle. So nothing too much more than that. I just thought it was an interesting note.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you told me this because now my Christmas present for my kids, my Nintendo, is I've got to figure out what else to get them for Christmas now.
Well, while you're joking, right, this is the problem. Like you go to Amazon, which you assume is a legit place, right? Like all of these and my kids have asked for these things before, but all these things are like no name brand, like wackadoodle. You're like, and you're like, oh, it has 50 games. I'm like, 50 games? Like, you're like, what? And they've supposedly licensed them from Taito, right? And all these old like Japanese like arcade companies, and you assume it's on the up and up. But I'm like, but do you really know? I don't know.
Well, I guess I have a question. Well, not a question. I just a thing too, where you see all these handhelds, like you were mentioning. I, don't know, I always forget. Like Retrocade, I think Retrocade or something like that is one of them, and these other like little small ones that you can actually use. Um, yeah, like your own. The actual cartridges or whatever from the different systems and throw them in there. But I mean, like when they have to go and get actual permission and I don't know, licensing or whatever to be able to do that. Like you can't just, or can you just create an, they're not actually making the cartridges themselves, but you can actually use your own and, to use on these systems. I don't know how that part of it works or how that even, works like that. So I just always thought how they could even get away selling these things. And it's not like, they're just doing it, on the side on eBay. They're actually going out there and, you'll see all the major, sites reporting on these and saying, hey, yeah, this is actually a good piece of hardware, you should pick it up and stuff like that. So I just always thought that was kind of weird.
Well, short of like the one player mini X or whatever, like if what you're talking about is like these review sites that'll have like these handhelds, which are not which are from legit companies, right? They're small time, right, companies. They're not like Asus or whatever, but they are going concerns. But then like they'll be reviewed showing emulation, and you just assume that whatever Nintendo game they're playing on the handheld, they actually own a valid license for. But for like the retro handhelds, supposedly theoretically the way that would work is somewhere, right? When Taito liquidated itself, assuming some legal entity came into possession, right, of those IP rights, whether they bought them, right? We heard and saw a lot of this in the wake of the Apple Samsung lawsuit. That was kind of during a time period where the tech industry and market were framed by a ton of trademark and copyright litigation, right? Um, and that was often being waged by like these little IP farms that like weren't actually electronics companies, but they just owned a license, right, to something, and they would go after people and try and intercept patents when they heard about them going through. But theoretically, like these retro handhelds, like some legal entity picked up the rights to, I'm just Taito as an example, and then you would go to that company, right, and license it. But yeah, it doesn't. because those things happen like so far below the radar. Like if somebody goes and they licenses, like when I'm thinking No One Lives Forever because that's the one that's in licensing hell that I can't stand. But 007, right? We knew that the I never played it, so I forget the title. What was the GoldenEye, right? We knew that the problem getting GoldenEye done was that two different movie studios had their hands in it and had to agree to it, right? The owner of the actual James Bond IP, then the owner of like the one studio who owned that particular like movie rights, and then I think the estate was involved, and then like one other, like so it was a big commercial IP right soup to make that happen. Like we hear about that and we know that that's going on. Um, but with these smaller things, again, like you just push the I believe button, I guess, and assume that it's all getting taken care of.
DB, were you gonna say something or no? Okay, I saw you go off mute. All right, we got a couple more news stories here to run out the headlines here. First one is Steam Families is out of beta, so you can use that now. You can set up basically you can have two accounts, obviously an adult account where you have like total control over all the games, and you can manage the parental controls and set hourly or daily play limits and stuff like that, approve purchases, and then obviously a kid account where obviously that's kind of getting filtered down to the kids. I thought that was kind of cool. I know they had kind of a I don't know if you even want to call it family thing, I guess, even before that. So this kind of, I think there was like two different systems, I guess they had of,
There's
um,
like library sharing. Yeah.
yeah. And now they're kind of just consolidating into one thing called Steam Families. So you could still, share your library. If you have one copy of something, you can have, if you have more than one person in the household, they can play it. You still can't play it at the same time. You'd have to buy another copy, like say, like they give the example here, Portal 2. If people want to jump in that, they'd have to, if you only had one copy, you'd have to, buy another copy so both people can do it. But, and, as long as someone's not playing the game, any other person in that household can buy or cannot play it. So that's kind of nice. And then also, but the one thing is also the game eligibility for family sharing is up to the developer. So if the developers want to do that, they can kind of shut that down, which I guess that's fair, I suppose. So I just thought it was kind of a cool thing. Then one other thing too about if someone's playing a game and they happen to get banned on it. So say, I own the game. DB, you're my child, you're my son. You're playing Call of Duty or something and you get banned in the game. I'm actually going to get banned in the game too, as being the owner of the game, which I kind of have a problem with that, just because obviously they can tell who's playing the game. So I don't know, why they ban both people, but I suppose that's just, I don't know if they came to agreement with maybe the developers or something like that, where that came from. But
I fully agree with that, and I'll say why I think they're getting banned. I'm going to say because they're holding you accountable as a parent for not giving your child any home training. So if your child goes out and behaves like a fool and gets themselves banned, then you get caught in the blast radius, and I'm okay with that.
See, and I'm not even thinking about actual children. I'm thinking about somebody who makes multiple accounts on a family, gets banned on one, and then just jumps to the other and jumps around. And so I think that's the other kind of use case in here, is that it's a way to potentially limit some of that as well.
yeah,
Besides questionable parenting, yes. Which, as your child, Tao, I try, but I know I can't live up to your high expectations.
That's right. Do better, be better in Call of Duty, DB. Well, they actually use the brother here in the example. I just happen to use son. So yeah, I guess for like child and parenting, it makes sense. But I suppose if it's like another adult, I mean, I guess it's still kind of the same thing, I suppose.
One of the things I remember from the previous version of Family Libraries was that it had to be on the same device, where this allows multiple different devices, where if you were going to share a game, like if I had something installed, my son's profile could also use it if it was part of the family library. But again, that was also up to developers as well.
And what do we have now on the market that Valve is trying to make a very big run at, where that would make sense? Steam Deck. Because you may be a person who plays on your big boy PC, your grown-up PC, and little Johnny may be the kid who plays on the Steam Deck. So I don't know. Seems like it makes good business sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Dad, can I use your Steam Deck after the show?
Sure, go ahead. Just don't get banned from anything. DB, go ahead and stay on the mic for our last news story about the PS5 Pro.
All right, let's talk about the PS5 Pro, everyone. This feels like a big news story for the week. We kind of knew something was coming. There's been plenty of rumors and teases around it, but we did get the about 9-minute Mark Cerny video that really highlighted an upgraded GPU, advanced ray tracing, and their AI-driven upscaling, their PSSR. Is what they're calling it, and a 2 terabyte system, 2 terabyte SD, all for and Wi-Fi 7, all for $700. Diskless, without a upright stand, for people who care about those things. I think the general sentiment that you saw on the internet is a lot of sticker shock. I think we had a meaningful and well-reasoned conversation over Discord around it in terms of, what the pricing actually looks like comparatively to graphics cards and other types of upgrades. And, as Game Logic, as you pointed out, the fact that Microsoft is releasing a $600 2 terabyte Xbox Series X that doesn't have any GPU upgrades at all for $100 less is, the overall price of $700 feels high, but when you start actually doing the math on things and making a market comparison, it doesn't seem nearly as out there as the sticker shock internet reaction seems to be. So I think they showed a number of 50, some games that will take advantage of some of the upgrades. A lot of their pitch seemed to be that the idea of not having to make a trade-off between frame rate and quality mode and being able to play 4K 60 is what the PS5 Pro is shooting for. So those are kind of the general rundown of the system itself. As Wara says in the chat, it is starting to get closer to PC builders, but whether or not this is for all existing PS5 users or for people that maybe haven't upgraded and want to extend the life cycle of the PS5 as well. So thoughts here, gentlemen?
Well, I just want to step in on Warwana's behalf. I mean, he can say this if he wants to. I just want to say I don't think his comments are saying that the PS5 Pro is similar or analogous to a PC. Just making that distinction because that's a lightning rod statement that's going around. I mean, if you feel that way, you're certainly entitled to that. But I just wanted you to say that on your.
Yes, I think that's
the comment.
Go ahead.
Comment DBQ you were grabbing was this one where he said, this week everyone is a PC builder professional and console gamers have been, running the litany of like all the differences between like the PS5 Pro and all the graphics cards. And I'm like, you guys have never even built a PC. Like, I just don't think you're like super well versed, right, in the difference between a Radeon GPU and an NVIDIA GPU. But they can certainly quote the sound bites that they've read in other articles. That's good that people are reading. At least I often get offended because people run to YouTube so much. So, I mean, if you could recite something back, hopefully you're actually reading it.
Thanks for the clarification on Mora's comment as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say I won't be buying this or the new Xbox, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I mean, you see that $700, it's like, oh my God, but yeah, like what DB said, once you start thinking about it and, crunching numbers, it obviously, business wise, it's going to make sense. And, just price wise, it's going to make sense. So yeah, that's it. All right, gentlemen, that is it for the news. Let's jump in.
Sorry.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
I figured we had a little bit more time on this one.
Sorry, I thought you were done.
Yeah. You
pull out the soapbox here for a minute. Here you go,
it's a long soapbox. I will try not make it equate to like the hours that I've spent writing on this topic. So So I think I'll at least start with so first of all, I'm gonna bypass the pure social media dynamic because there's a particular traffic lane of discussion that is absolutely not news, that social media has engaged in. So I'm gonna steer clear of that one for right now. I'm largely talking about like the PlayStation 5 Pro and how I evaluate it and why I don't care. It's a $700 price, and I get that. And DBQ, you mentioned sticker shock, and I I I wish it was just sticker shock to me is like Apple comes out with with the new iPhone and it's $100 more than the last one, right? And then people go, "Ah," that to me is sticker shock. The complete falling out and behaving as if this is the apocalypse, and like NAFTA just got signed and some international trade agreement that's gonna like significantly impact the economic status of the United States. Like it's totally and completely over the top and ridiculous. Um, what a few things just to go back through history and again get back to like why I don't care. I think the younger generation of gamer doesn't know and hasn't read and isn't knowledgeable about the gaming industry history, and people who are our age also conveniently forget often in the support of ongoing narratives. But we forget that we used to have more than three console competitors on the market. The 3DO came out in 1990 for $699 in 1990. In 1993, Neo Geo came out at 650, and in 1995, the Sega Saturn came out at 399. Now, 399 isn't as high as 600 prices, right? But this is 399 in comparison to a history of consoles that had come out at 99, 150, right, 199, right? So 399 was still definitely on the into the sticker shock territory. That was the late 90s. Flash forward to the early 2000s, we have been hovering around $400 and $500 consoles for well on 20 years now. And there have been SKUs that have come in cheaper than that, right? So somebody oh, the Xbox 360, yeah, the Xbox 360 that wasn't 399 had no hard drive, right? So like what people bought was the hard drive unit. So we've been in this $400 $500 range for a while. Me personally, although I realize for some reason this is not how other consumers tend to view the market, which I don't understand why. In no way did I ever think that we were going to be at $400 and $500 consoles forever, right? Eventually, right, by definition, the price was going to go up, and some vendor was going to be the first one to trip across that wire. Um, so now, right here we are. The other aspect of like why it doesn't bother me is again, no one needs a PlayStation 5 Pro, right? You don't really need a PlayStation 5. You don't really need a gaming console at all. It is a luxury item, and as you mentioned, DBQ, like the $700 thing, this is the super high end of the high end, right? Of luxury model stuff, right? That's available in the gaming space. You don't have to buy it. Sony's not holding a gun to your head telling you have to buy it. They're not forcing you to buy it. And a lot of people have been using that term too, like they're forcing developers to code for it. No, they're not. There's no mandate and requirement in PlayStation publishing that requires you to have a PlayStation 5 version, PlayStation 5 Pro version of a game that you're going to publish. That is in stark contrast to actual commercial agreements and frameworks and requirements. For instance, on the Apple side, when you publish something to an Apple store, there is a requirement for it to have a responsive UI design that reacts to it being deployed on iPad, right? Xbox has requirements, right? They had the requirement way back in the day that anything published had to have some type of Xbox Live interactivity. So this is not a requirement, and it's not forcing people to do anything that they don't want to do. It's offering them a choice. So my personal feeling is kind of as Warwana said, PlayStation hasn't given me a compelling reason to buy the PlayStation 5 Pro. Um, when the PlayStation 4 Pro was here last time in 2017, thereafter we had Tilu 2, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Spider-Man. 5 big marquee reasons, like literally 5 games that have sold and created an impression on the market that exceeds a lot of the games that have come before it and have really defined for PlayStation 2 generations of console. We don't have those titles right now, in my opinion. And when those titles show up, then that to me is a reason to get a PlayStation 5 Pro. Those things weren't there when the PlayStation 4 Pro launched in 2017. They came a year later. And so it's not at all unusual, particularly in the consumer electronics industry, to seed a platform product, get it out in the wild, give people an opportunity to onboard with it, allow developers time to get their feet wet and create products for it, and then have software that comes thereafter. This isn't the launch of a console generation. Launch of a console generation, you would definitely like to have a launch lineup, although I question the launch lineups of both consoles over the last 2 generations as being less than what they have been in the past. But it's not unusual for these mid-gen consoles to show up and largely stand on the strength of, hey, you can play the games that have come out earlier this generation and you're going to get like a performance bump. So again, I think there's been a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth and Sturm and Drang about this thing that just are not actually credible or valid or commensurate with what's actually going on in the industry.
I think one more thing that ties in with that in terms of not necessarily that it aligns with what's going on in the industry is a number of articles over the past couple of days that look at the PS5 launch price adjusted for inflation. That you've got articles from Game Rant and Games Radar and GameSpot that all show the 2020 launch at $499 that adjusted for inflation puts that right up over $600 nowadays. So going back to the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 4 Pro, $100 difference. Granted, that was at a time when the PlayStation 4 was cheaper, and you were looking at $399 for a Pro, but still the $100 difference. If you think about it within the kind of current dollar value, it's one of those, like, I am softening on my sticker shock because there's enough logic behind where it gets to from a business perspective.
So you're softening on the sticker shock, I think, because you're an actual economist and you think in those terms. What I will say is, I mean, Colin Moriarty has kind of made this argument for over a decade. Brap makes this argument, and I always kind of tackle Brap at the shoestrings, and I always say, yes, as a mathematician, as a person with a finance background, yes, I get that. I will, however, say your average consumer, they react to what hits them in their wallet at the cash register. So I agree with that. What I will say though, just to follow up in that vein, is this was kind of my other lesson learned, or things people should consider. People should look at the industry and look at the fact that historically the small form factor refreshes have historically arrived with a price cut. Number one. The other reason that you have a price cut typically by these hardware vendors is when their thing is not selling or when they're behind. When Nintendo launched the 3DS in March of 2011, they launched it at $250 and the market had an incredibly poor reaction. In August of 2011, right, 5 months later, they slashed the price to $169.99. Sega and PlayStation went back and forth tooth and nail on price cuts on the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn, with PlayStation tightening the screws down and constantly dropping the price right to points that Sega just could not keep up with the Saturn. And Sega made efforts to make price cuts because they were behind. PlayStation cut the price of the PlayStation 3, right, and expanded the hard drives on offer because they were behind the Xbox 360. Despite the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series line not really selling well and definitely not keeping pace with PlayStation, they have not slashed the price on those boxes one iota. They've had sales and they've had incentives, but they haven't slashed MSRP. And I would contend that in past history, normally, by normal supply and demands on the market, you would have seen a price cut. Nintendo Switch has maintained its price without one drop of price for 7+ years. And so I think we should look at this generation as having some type of economic and financial dynamic that is starkly different than the rest of the 40+ year history of the gaming industry. We're at 50 years ish now total, but I'm saying if you take that 7 years off the top, right, the 40 plus years that went before it, something different is going on now. So again, if you're going to launch a mid-gen refresh console and you haven't slashed price on the other one and you're still not slashing price, again, I think the comment I made today was like, the needle has not been moving in consumer favor for a very long time. And when a swing gets to the top of its arc, like how much longer do you expect before it starts moving in the opposite direction? So I think that's that's where we are. But again, my whole point on this is the market's going to react, and Sony's going to make the decision right based on market reaction if it warrants continuing to invest and putting that SKU on the market. And if the juice isn't worth the squeeze, then they'll make a change. And that's what we wait. That's in my opinion what we wait to see. All this doom and gloom that it's a failure, it's too high, corporate greed. All corporations are greedy. They're not people. Right? Like I can't have anger at a non-human entity. So they charge a price, I make a decision, right? And the market, will decide what happens.
All right. DB, any other comments on this? No. I just want to say though, I don't know if you put Nintendo in there because they never slashed the prices of anything, games or consoles. So at least not that I can remember within the last.
Well, that's why I said they slashed the price of the 3DS.
Well, yeah, that was probably like one of their last ones. Yeah, just normally. But I mean, they've had a pretty good success other than the Wii U, and even then, I don't think they really slashed the prices at that point. I think they just kind of left it and moved on at that point. But all right, so let's move on to our round robin games talk here. I got a few games real quick. I jumped back into Deep Rock Galactic Survivors this past week. Actually, I played quite a bit of it on the Steam Deck still, and this game's hard, man. I still haven't even got past the first level. I don't think so. I'm still tooling away. I've been getting better though. I've had longer runs. I thought I was going to get past that first level, but nope. I'm still going. I still haven't beat it yet. So just getting more different loadouts, but the different weapons and stuff like that. I've seen like basically like a sniper that you have, like an energy sniper rifle. It's kind of cool. Like ice grenades and all these other things. So I'm just still tooling away at it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's still pretty fun. Still, I believe in early access, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think it's been fully released yet. I think they just had a roadmap update actually. I think this past week too, or a couple weeks ago. So just kind of outline things that they're going to be doing coming up. The second title is called Little to the Left. I was in one of those kind of states again where I was kind of like, I didn't want to play anything like at the time, like all the regular stuff I had been playing, like Fortnite or Deep Rock or even Rocket League or anything like that. So I was kind of tooling around Game Pass again, just seeing what had been released lately. And I came upon A Little to the Left. It's just kind of a cozy little puzzle game, like super simple. Like you just get little puzzle. You're like in a house, I guess, and there's a cat of some kind somewhere around the game. I've only seen it once so far, but basically, it comes up and there's like 3 pictures and you gotta like straighten them out, or there's some markers like are different colors, and then there's like a little kind of the background's almost like a piece of paper. And the different colored markers are kind of like in the background. You kind of have to just line them up and line them up like that, and to each color that they're supposed to go to. Like super simple puzzles, and it was just kind of a chill game that I was playing. And I was just it was just through xCloud. Like I said, I didn't install the game. I'm just playing it through the cloud. So I figured it's not graphic intensive. It's not a shooter or anything like that. So that usually I'll just kind of play those through the cloud when I'm at home or something. So it was pretty easy. And then last one, Peglin, which I think I had mentioned a few months ago, maybe back during Summerfest, or just like when the summer started and we had all those festivals and conferences and stuff coming out. It's Pachinko roguelike. So it's kind of like I forgot the name of the game now. Dang it. Slay the Spire, where it's kind of RPG. You kind of have your kind of overworld where there's like a path that you can follow, but during the actual gameplay there's a pachinko like game that you kind of play. You shoot out the almost like, I guess, Peggle. Even though I never played that, but I've seen videos of that and stuff, where you shoot out the little ball and it's like bouncing around. And as you're hitting the other little like kind of spheres that are around the game board, you get like power ups, or you can there's like there's like an exclamation marks kind of here and there throughout the little board that you're playing on. If you hit those, it gives you kind of power up, or you just collect money. Some of them are like filled in with gold. You can get the money. You can rejuvenate like the board and just bring it all back, to a full board, and kind of start over, which is kind of nice because then you get more money and stuff like that. And then once you get through that little pachinko game, then you do your attack of whatever you happen to get on the board or anything, or there's like a side panel too that has all your different power ups that you can buy between each fight. So that's kind of cool. So it was just, I don't know, it was just like a little weird. Instead of using like, instead of picking cards, like most of these games have now, you're going through just like this pachinko game to kind of get power ups and just do other different stuff. So it's pretty cool little game. So I was having fun with that. So I'll probably continue on with that one. And I was actually playing that on my PC, which is kind of weird. But it's a perfect Steam Deck game, though, I think, from like if I'm on the train or something when I'm going to work. But yeah, I'll definitely kind of keep going with that. I only played one round, but I actually got through the whole board to the end boss, but he like pretty much wrecked me. I got fairly close. I think he starts at like, oh man, I don't think it was 1,000. I think it was like 800 or 900 like health points, and I think I got him down to a couple hundred. So I was pretty close, but I ran out of time. I just ran out of moves, so I didn't have anything left to beat him. So, but had a lot of fun with it, and I'll continue to play that. Any questions or comments on any of those games? No. All right, DB, you want to talk about Astro Bot?
Sure. I'll talk a little bit about it. Again, I want to thank everybody in the chat as Game Logic is pulling up your messages. Appreciate all the conversation around the PS5 Pro and the industry dynamics there. I don't have a whole lot new to say about Astro Bot that I didn't say last week. Guess what? It's still a lot of fun. Makes me smile. It is still just a little touch of joy and lots of charm. So I'm just kind of chipping away at it. So if you enjoy platformers, there is a lot to enjoy there. If you enjoy PlayStation brand, as Hero Down Under talked about last week, there's just so much there to, take your time and enjoy with. So Astro Bot is, and Wara just talks about Platinum Astro Bot as well. So 305 little Astros bots that were rescued there. So yeah, lots to play. Still will kind of chip my way through it. I'm sure I'll talk more about it as we hit toward the end of the year. But again, if you own a PlayStation 5 and you enjoy, platformers, or you're looking for something to play with your kids, there's a lot to enjoy here.
Nice. All right. And that'll round us out for the day. Game Logic, going to have any other games that you want to talk about or anything? Or just the
I
usual?
didn't really have a report out for tonight because I've just been playing games as a service date games. So Call of Duty, World of Warships. We'll probably discuss it at some other point, but I packed up my consoles this week, so they're staged in boxes, ready to go out to GameStop. So
oh boy,
I'll be PC only here for a while. But
wait, are you getting rid of all your systems?
Yeah.
So is this what you've done this cleanse before, and then you cycle back around?
I have.
So why this time?
I hate to wax and sound so serious, but honestly, this weekend been doing some math and kind of going through things and thinking about when how much longer the kids are going to be around and when they're going to go off to college, like how many like viable years of gaming I have left. Quite honestly, the PlayStation 5 Pro discussion, not my frustration of the discussion itself, but it spawned in me like several like ideas and kind of going back and when I did all the research and going back through history. I won't get entirely into it, but when I came back to PC gaming in 1999 and started building, because I had toe dipped into PC gaming before, but hadn't started building my own PCs. When I started building my own PCs in 1999, I had a PlayStation at the time. But I stopped playing it. I didn't buy games for it. The only reason I kept the PlayStation was I had a buddy in grad school who would come by to play Tekken Tag Tournament and 989 football. So I was gonna get rid of my PlayStation, and he was like, "Bro, how are we gonna like play games when I come over?" And I said, "Okay." So, um, so so I kept it, and then after Sega had kind of stepped off the scene by killing the Sega Saturn. Sega came back with the Dreamcast, and I wasn't going to buy it, but then I went over to a neighbor's house and played it, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta buy it." The Dreamcast brought me back into console gaming, and then I kept on with like the PlayStation and the Xbox, and then it started getting hooked to content creation. And so you mentioned these times in this generation when I've come back, and quite honestly, I hate to say it, like the only reason I've come back is for the podcast. So I just thinking over all these things and like amount of time like before retirement and all these things, I was like, I want to take this span of time to actually just be a PC gamer because of all the things about PC gaming that I love, like flight simulators and wheels and pedals and all that stuff. And just not, I mean, I haven't had these consoles on for the last several months. Yes, I've toe dipped and played like a game here and there on PlayStation, but I haven't had the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox on at all. So they're just taking up space. Um, I have multiple PCs down here doing video editing and stuff, and they're just kind of in the way all the time. So I just kind of got to the point where I was like, I don't, quite honestly, I don't know why I keep doing this. So, but
no, I think I appreciate the honesty there and the openness, because it's something that I've been wrestling with for the past month or so, when we've gone from a 2-income house to a 1-income house right now, right? And how much I feel like I need to pick up something to talk about, and and now looking for, granted, I just picked up 2 new release games last week, but those were ones that I had kind of budgeted for. But it definitely starts to, for me, it starts, thinking about, with 2 kids in college, like where is my disposable income, and how am I using it?
Yeah, I mean, even the new stuff that I've played, like it's just not moving the needle as much for me anymore. Not as much as like deep dive. I mean, I've got an incredibly extensive, backlog, right, in PC games. There's cheap, inexpensive stuff coming out on PC games all the time. It's $70 games for console. And again, I don't have any problem with $70 games. I just went on a long diatribe about like being realistic and understanding when prices are going to increase. But then I'm like do I need to play those $70 games? Do I really have a big demand to play those games? Do they move the needle for me personally, or quite honestly, do I really want to spend like a couple weeks like diving deep into Digital Combat Simulator, which I love, but great Scott, man, like starting like memorizing the startup sequence of the stinking Mi-24 Hind, that's a job, a full-time job, you know. So yeah, I just finally pulled that trigger and bit that bullet. So we are going to make that transition. Hence, and I've just right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever. I've had a ton of fun the past few weeks, kind of like just playing the games that again are kind of like my job. And I know Swiss hates it, but going back to Destiny 2, right? Because from a nostalgia perspective, I wanna run through that, with new characters, and work myself back up right to the final shape. But as far as I know we're about to go to what's up next. I was in the middle of downloading. I mentioned a couple weeks ago or last week that I'd gone back to playing Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC. So I was in the middle of installing that on another box on the other side of the room. So I do plan on getting back into that during this week for my what's up next.
Sorry, I had to jump out for a second, but I don't know if you mentioned this, but I think it makes sense for what you've been playing too, or mostly been playing. Like you said, the live service stuff, and you could always, if you want to, you can wait for PlayStation game to come out on PC. You can wait for, you can get Game Pass for a few months and, get and play stuff on PC also, which I've been, and, DB had mentioned that, he was thinking about, how he's spending this stuff. And I've been thinking about that too with my PC. Like, I have a 3070, in an RTX 3070 video card. It's not super, super powerful, but it does the job that I need it to do. Like I don't need, 4K blazing, sun god rays coming from the sky to, play these games. Like I just, I was fine, perfectly fine. I'm perfectly fine playing on the Switch a lot of times. Like I'm playing Rocket League, I'm playing Fortnite on there. If the Switch 2 comes around, I'll probably buy that for sure. Just because it's you get those Nintendo exclusives. But thinking about like the next Xbox, PlayStation, I haven't really bought in a few generations, but even the next Xbox, like I just play those, on PC. So like, why do I need a box anymore? So I've been kind of, I guess, thinking that way too. Do I have the money? Like, sure, I could buy all I can even buy a PS5 if I wanted to, but I was like, I don't need, like, I have my one Xbox like on my main TV, and I got rid of, I gave one of them to my son, like the old Xbox One, not the Series S that I had, just the Xbox One S. I have another one downstairs. It's like, why do I need all these consoles? I could just get rid of, I can get rid of them. So eventually, once those, go away or they're not making games for them anymore, I'm not going to replace them. There's no need to. So it just kind of makes sense, I think, in the long run. As for me going forward, I'm sorry. Go ahead, DB. Or Game Logic.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I don't want people to get it twisted. This is not me. This is not me telling you need to give up your console. It doesn't make any sense to play games on console. Playing games on console is a great system solution to like your personal requirements. This is just me personally where I am in life. Where I am in life is vastly different from most of the people who would ever listen to this show. Just again, my age and how long I've been gaming. Part of this is also not necessarily me talking about gaming less, right? Part of this is I still want to build PCs, and now I'm thinking about my next build, and orienting that around a 9950X, and but I want to spend time doing that and focusing on that and worrying less about gaming on consoles because for me it doesn't provide the same entertainment ROI, um, and I have struggled to get rid of that, quite frankly, because, like I said, because of this podcast, and to a certain extent for the last 3 years, right, Brat podcast, and I'm like, well, if I'm going to do these things, I guess I have to be knowledgeable, about consoles. But I will say, this podcast, we don't have any requirement that this be a console centric podcast, right? Brap show, literally, if we talk about PC gaming, people get angry, right? If we talk about PC gaming for more than like 5 minutes, I don't. This is our show, so I don't feel any need to meet that imperative, right? Yeah. So I mean, this show will be fine. But yeah, this is just what I'm personally doing. Everybody else should do you and continue to play and enjoy games on consoles. And I get that you love the push button effect. Like I love the push button effect. I mean, Tao and I were Stadia people, and the reason I love Stadia was because I would come home, I would pick up the control and just go. Like I didn't get patches. I didn't have to worry about drivers. I didn't have to worry about stinking Microsoft interrupting me and nagging me all the time with operating system mess. You know, but but I'm also fine, right, with the alternative. So, all right. So, Tao, what do you got coming up next?
Yeah. So I'll continue to play Peglin. And actually, I want to get back to Age of Mythology. I didn't actually have time to play that this past week, so I will also do that. DB, anything on the horizon for this coming week?
I have been sinking a lot of time into MLB The Show because we're coming independent race time. But also this week on Epic, the new Rugrats Adventure in Gameland game, which is a little platformer, is free. So that came out on the 10th of September. It's got good kind of modern graphics, but also has an 8-bit graphic setting. So I picked that up and want to give that a look as well.
Nice. Game Logic, one more question for you, not to go back to the console talk. Are you, and I didn't, you might have said this before, but I didn't hear. Are you giving away your Switch?
Yes.
Or Switches?
Yeah.
How about the Steam Decks?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
That counts as a PC. Yeah.
Those are PCs.
That's for, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually,
gaming. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, so I had a Linux build down here before. I eventually scrapped it because I wanted more of the compatibility and performance, and again, the Linux bit was limited in me figuring out the multimedia and content creation stuff. I'm at the point now where I'm thinking I'm going to swing back that way again for like one box, and because I've seen and become more confident about the NVIDIA drivers, so now I don't feel like I'm necessarily like handcuffed to having to go with a Radeon driver. Although I love the Radeon option on Linux because it works better than it does on Windows. people who are AMD stands can hate me for saying it, but that from my experience, that's true. And it's a lower cost alternative, right? And provides lots of performance actually, for the price. I just can't deal with the way it behaves on Windows boxes. So that may open up, right, some options as well. But yeah, no, I'm keeping the Steam Decks.
All right, nice. All right, gentlemen, that is
Oh, there
it
were-
for 10. Oh,
Sorry, there was one thing that I did want to say. So wanted to say thanks a lot to Lance John for swinging by. This is Lance from Geeks Worldwide, right? DBQ.
I think so. Could be.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I think so. I thought so too. So Lance, if it's the same person, Lance and I were at Geeks Worldwide at the same,
That's great.
over
Thanks,
the same
Lance.
time. I'm not sure if he was still there when you onboarded. So, but thanks a lot for swinging by. Good to see you. Appreciate you coming through.
nice. Yep. Thanks for everybody who came by. Nate, Hair Down Under, Wara. I think that was it. I think that was all. No, I forgot that was the one guy's name here at the top here. Thrifty, I think, or Thrift.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for all stopping by during the show. That'll wrap up episode number 355, which I had to just look up because I forgot. Please come back next week where Mr. Game Logic will be the primary host, and DB and I should be here to co-host. Please like and subscribe on YouTube or SoundCloud or wherever you might happen to pick up or watch the show. DB, Game Logic, thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you, everybody who joined in the comments, and we will see you next week.